All right, welcome back, Database Development Design at Raritan Valley Community College. This is Dr. Larson. Again, we've got our SQL lessons here for week 7. This is our Lab 6 walkthrough. So as always, we start by going to our table here, okay? And we're going to go down to week 7, going to download the temp table views, okay? And you shouldn't need any more data. It should all be in there. If you need this, if you haven't done the earlier labs, you're probably going to need to grab all my data builds and load those up because this will use some, but I'm not going to go through that. You can look at some of the earlier videos. Again, you just want week 7 lab temp views. Let's go ahead and open up. So lab 6, I know it's week 7, but it's lab 6 because we didn't have a lab in the first week. That's why. So, okay. So we'll open this up. See, we're going to grab down here. Go ahead, open up your SQL Server. So, again, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm using my database, a DDD. Always make sure you got that. Always look up here, make sure you're lined up properly. Let me fix this because I don't know why. There we go. That's better. All right. So, let's go ahead into. All right. So here's our lab. So I got a hint up here. Hint, if you run into prop mistake and to delete your table or view. So basically if you make a mistake and you want to just delete your table or view to run it again, just drop the table name or drop view. Either one will get rid of what it got. So if you guys saw, I had built that doggy. So if I say drop view doggy one, and if I go here, if you saw that in my last video, I did that, and then you'll go back, and now if I go into my views, it should be gone. So if I go here and I refresh my views, doggy one's gone. All right, so that's it. I'm just going to drop doggy two I don't really need either one of them, so drop that. All right, little spring cleaning on my end. Okay, so we're going to start with run the following query, simple as can be. See what the query does. So select all from cust orders into payment cash. Now notice you get no results. All it says is 42 rows affected. It does not show you anything because what you've done is you sent your results into a table. You did not send your results to the user to see. So run a select query on the temp table corrected above. So we say select star from temp one. And again, just to show you, we don't care about case, doesn't matter here. It'll still work. Execute and Viola. We have our table here. Okay. So that is basically, this table is nothing, it's everything, notice they're all cash. So it's all cash payments from our customer orders. All right. So again, using cust orders, create a table that contains all records for the electronics department. So if we sit there and say select, and I'm sorry, this should be a temp table. I'm sorry. Create a temp table. Select star from cust orders where department equals electronics. And I always run it first before I bother trying to turn it into something. Let's make sure the query works, right? And there it is, it works. Now I want to show you real quick, just so you guys know, your into statement for your temp table would go right here. It'd go between your select and your from. So even if I had, let's say I was doing this way, order ID, cust ID, price, payment, tran date, and department, which really don't need anymore because it's going to be all electronics. Then here would my into go. This is where my into would go. And I'm going to call this one my temp table. I'll call this, so I'm going to say into, instead of temp, I'm just going to call this this is my electronics one, okay? So either way, you can use the star. I'm just trying to point out this is where the temp table goes, no matter what. It always goes right above the from. Even if you got like 30 joins, that's where you go to, right above the from. So now let's make sure our temp table works. So we'll say select star from elect. And now now they're telling me that we want, so this has got 23 records as you just saw when I made it. And when we do this one up here, just you can't see yet. Let me move this. But we have 42 records here. So 23 and 42, keep that in mind. Okay. So the next thing it's going to ask us to do is to union these two tables together. If you remember our union is the result of two select statements. So we're going to select star from temp1, union select star from the one we just made, elect. Okay. And the results come out to 51. Now, why did they come out to 51? Why didn't they come out to 42 plus 30 something? You have to take my 51. Okay, why? No, you can always, and of course, if you ever notice, it's always down here. Always right down here is your, or that's how many rows. So, what can we do to make sure? Well, what happens is, remember, unions get rid of our duplicates. So if I union all and run this, I will now get 65 rows, which makes a lot more sense. Because what was happening is all the electronics, like this one here, this electronics cache was not being shown twice because it would have been popped up twice. You had cache and you had electronics, so the two would have popped up. So all the cache ones, would not have shown up here. Okay, because notice down here we've got some credit check ones from electronics and everything else. But now you notice if I did this, if I said by, let's just say price, that would be a fun one to do. They order by price, check this out. So now we've got our electronics ones. Notice here, electronics. Two lines, exact same line. That's our duplicate right there. These two are duplicates, and you're going to see it everywhere. That's cache and electronics. So all the cache and electronics should duplicate. Okay, that's what happened between the union and the union. All right. Just a quick reminder of how unions work. All right, now we're going to troubleshoot the following query. Select tran date department from select star from temp. What does this even mean? All right, so first of all, what's in temp one? All right, so we have a tran date and department in there. So what are we trying to do? Are we trying to get, but we have no table. Notice I do not have a from. I have a from with a select statement. So what I have is what's called a derived. If you remember correctly, this is called a derived table. Derived table. So what we need to do for a derived table in order for it to work, sounds silly, you have to name it. So you can name it whatever you want. T, I'll call this D. We'll continue with my dog. And then we'll just run it. And now it'll work. You just have to give it a name. So it knows now it has a name to attach to it. It needs that in its back processing, but that's how it works. So that's what troubleshoots. It's simple. This one trips everyone up. People just stare at me all the time with this one in class. They can't figure this one out. All right. That's why I like it. It's a good tricky one. All right. So click next query, open a new tab and try to query temp1. We tried this. Remember, I'll show, if you've watched my last video, you should know what's going to happen. I go to open a new tab, I say select from, and I go to temp1. I get an invalid object name, temp1. No temp1 exists, but come back here. Try it here. Select star from temp1. That works. Remember that your temp table only exists in your single instance, and each tab is a different instance in this system. So it's not usable for other people, and it's not usable for anybody outside of your instance. All right. Now I want you to run the following query below. Select test table from cust orders. 42 rows. Now, as I was trying to say before at the beginning, if you run into a problem, let's say you tried to run this again, you're going to get an error. So if that happens, always remember the first thing you want to do is just drop the table. Okay. And now we can run it again. Now it'll work. All right. So that, it doesn't let you run it twice. Now try querying test table over here. Over here and say, if you watch my last video, you know what's going to happen. But if you didn't watch my last video, here we go. Shame on you, but so that works, okay? Because test table is, again, an actual table. In fact, if I go here to my right and I refresh this and I open my tables up, there it is. It's there. It's a table. So that's the difference between your temp and your test. All right. So now try querying test table. The new query, what happened? It works. Okay. It works. All right. Now turn the query below into a view. First, let's make sure the query works. And it does. Okay. Turn it into a view. Really simple. You just simply say create view. And I'm going to call this tutors. Then as, and then you wrap this here. Execute. There we go. Now to see if it works, a couple things you can do. Again, you can go over here to your left. You can refresh your views. There she is. There it is. And we can run it. And we can say, we can run a query from the view. We can say select star from tutors. That's our view. Just make sure it works. We do that. And yep, we got, and now we say where the subject does not start with the letter G. So we say where subject not like G, because remember we're using when we're using a wildcard, we have to use like. So subject not like G, and now there. So you saw our geography went away. If I don't use the where statement, my first response is geometry. If I use the where statement, bye-bye geometry, it's gone. Okay, now run a query from the view you just created where tutor name does not end with the letter B. Okay, so same thing. We're going to say select star from tutors where name, or now watch this. This is tricky because I'm using tutor name, which has space in it. I have to use these square brackets, okay, because my column name has a space in it. Tutor name not like. Now we want to say end with the letter B, so that should be Bob, should be our concern here. So the end, say there, okay? And there you go, Bob's gone, all right? So that's the main thing here. One cool thing, again, now you see this big complicated query here. And I got my idiot dogs. All right, so if you go over here to views, and we got our view and our tutor, you can go here. Number one, a view kind of almost looks like a table. It might confuse you at first. I'm over here and I click on it because you can see the columns and stuff. But if I go here to this and I go to create script view to create new query, I always like to do create because the beauty of doing a create is if I open this up, which this will takes a second, it's running, Amazingly, this used to be faster. I think Microsoft is slower. But anyway, so this will come back. So when you've had this thing created and you're like, oh man, how is this table made? You can go through and look and you'll see all the tables it came from, all the data it came from. And the reason I use create, the reason I always say script to create is because if I execute this, it's going to fail because it already exists. So I can't break anything. Okay. Or in this case, I'm sorry, I was just on create, but it'll fail because tutors already exist. So because the other options you had, I don't know if you saw when I go to script text view, is you can create or alter, drop. Yeah, all that will get rid of stuff. So always do create too, because you can't really mess it up. All right, anyway, thank you very much. That's the end of this one. I'll see you for the next class.